Hello, and welcome to the Scott Mize Show, a podcast focused on health, diet, bodybuilding, and philosophy. I interview experts, doctors, coaches, and N=1 case studies to answer your questions about improving health, achieving your best physique, and making sustainable progress. We'll cover topics from carnivore and ketogenic diets to bodybuilding to life philosophy and everything in between. Enjoy the show. This episode is brought to you by LMNT Electrolytes. This month, we're switching it up with an exclusive offer that's only for VIP LMNT partners, including Carnivore Cast listeners. You can now receive this free sample pack along with any regular purchase when you use my custom link, which is provided in the show notes or my Instagram link in bio. That's drinklmnt.com/carnivorecast, all one word. And as I said, I'll include the link in the show notes. LMNT Electrolytes are convenient, evidence-based, and delicious, and get yours today to help support the show. Thank you. This is a quick disclaimer before we start the show. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said here should be taken as medical advice, and please consult with your physician before making any changes to your diet, exercise regime, or medications. Thank you, and on to the show.
Justin O'Donnell is a father, author, and super heavyweight bodybuilder, placing as high as second at the USA Championships in 2023. He's been bodybuilding for a long time, trains in Florida with pros like Justin Jacoby, Brett Wilkin, and Martin Fitzwater. Justin O'Donnell is also in the Serious Bodybuilding Discord group, along with other pros like Stu Sutherland and Ken and Yan Wu, as well as amateurs like me. Welcome to the show, Justin.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. It's quite an introduction.
Yeah, of course. So I'd love to just start with kind of your story. How long have you been bodybuilding and what got you into it in the first place?
Yeah, true. So a lot of guys are similar to me in that most of us started off playing some kind of sport, and it's kind of a recurring theme for football with a lot of us. So I was a football player. Football was my thing growing up. I played at Pop Warner. I was on a very good team. In fourth grade, we actually went all the way to Disney Wide World of Sports to play for the national championship.
Wow.
And we got fourth best in the country that year. And then from there, I played high school football, varsity at a 5A school in South Carolina. And that's when I got into weight training seriously, was for football. And I just loved like going to the gym and lifting weights. It was really fun. I was like, I started to enjoy my weight training more than I did going to practice.
Yeah.
So when my football career obviously ended, because we're all not going to be in the NFL, I had to take that competitive energy and put it into something. When I graduated college, I kept my training discipline. I just loved going to the gym. It was kind of one of those things I just always enjoyed doing, the progression, getting better, getting stronger, getting bigger. When I moved into like my post-college working days, I always kept doing that. And I never aspired to be a bodybuilder. I was vaguely aware of like Ronnie Coleman, lightweight baby, and like I knew that Jay Cutler was, Mr. Olympia a little bit, but I didn't like follow the sport like at all, right? And I was training a lot in Connecticut, and I was around bodybuilders. So what actually got me into bodybuilding, there was probably 3 moments that I can think of. The first time was I went out to Venice and I trained with Mike O'Hearn for a day.
Oh, cool.
Which that was like my first experience of like what real bodybuilding training could be like how intense it could be. And he put me through the craziest workout for 2 hours. I know a lot of people like to talk crap about Mike and like pretty boy, all this stuff and like fake natty or whatnot, but the dude knows how to train and train crazy. And I asked him when I was done training, I was like, I've always wondered about, like, could I do bodybuilding? And he told me, you have the legs for it. Now, I wasn't big. I was like $170 back then. But he had told me through that leg workout that if I wanted to do it, he thought I could, potentially pursue it. Wow. So fast forward, I was in Connecticut training, and that's kind of where Blackstone Labs had started. And PJ Braun had gone to high school in the same town I was living in, which is Brookfield, Connecticut, and he trained at the New York Sports Club. And I remember seeing him in person for the first time. This was back then when he was a pretty big dude. I was like, dang, that's a big guy. And I went up and talked to him. We talked a little bit, and he also kind of encouraged me. He's like, hey, man, yeah, you have like the good, build for it. You already have a lot of good foundation. If you want to get into competing, I'd recommend it. You just need to hire a coach. And that's when like the wheels started turning. And then I actually had a client that I was helping at New York Sports Club. I was teaching her how to like train her legs and stuff. And she was prepping for her first show. And she's like, you should do it with me. You should prep for a show too. You should hire Chris Tuttle. And I was like, all right, well, whatever. Let's see what this thing's all about. I don't know about the whole posing on stage thing, but I like training. And I called Chris Tuttle and I hit it off with him immediately. And we did our first show in 2016 at the East Coast Cup. And I was a light heavyweight that year. And the process of the first competition, so hard. I had never done anything that hard in my life. I'm a disciplined guy, but I was having a hard time following the diet. Like I go out to have like a frozen yogurt to substitute meal 2 or something. I'd be like matching the calories or whatever.
Yeah.
Not really doing all the cardio. And back then the shows were like pretty competitive. I mean, my light heavy class had like 16 guys in it for like men's bodybuilding. That was a lot back then. And our novice class had 2 call outs in novice.
Wow.
And me like not really trying, I got 4th. And I was like over the moon about that.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm never gonna do this again. I hated every aspect of the like preparing aspect of it. And then as soon as I got on stage and I had like my moment, under the lights, I was like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like this. And Chris, after, he's like, you got the bug, didn't you? And I was like, yeah, when can I compete again? He's like, well, we need to get a little bigger and then we could maybe do it next year. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And I've competed ever since.
Wow. Every year?
I took 1 year off.
Okay, cool. And that's amazing. Yeah. I just had my first show a couple months ago. And similarly, there were parts of prep where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is stupid. And I didn't think I would actually enjoy the show day itself that much. But once you get on stage and you're under the lights and you're looking at the judges and the crowd, it's really, really fun. So I love that aspect of it.
Yeah, you're just getting started. It gets better and better. And every prep is easier, in my opinion. Like they're never easy, but you go mentally to places you've never been before, and it's just temporary.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it was actually pretty easy other than getting sick twice. But I had COVID in January at the start of prep. And I was in the hospital for a week.
That's bad.
That was horrible. And then I got some GI issues closer to the show, which was pretty bad. But yeah, I really loved it. And now you work with Justin Jacoby, correct?
Yeah, so I've worked with 3 coaches in my career. Well, technically 4 if you include a training coach. So I worked with Tuttle for 3 years.
Okay.
And during that time, I'd become friends with Chris DiDomenico, and he had done my training for a couple years.
Okay.
And that combination gave me some good progress. I learned some good things from Chris, like a lot of range of motion type of stuff, and training more intensely, really. And then after Tuttle and Chris, I hired Justin Compton. He was my coach for a couple years for my 2 shots at nationals. My first shot at nationals, I achieved my goal. I got 5th, first call out. I was in there with the heavyweights with Ross Flanagan, and Jonathan Withers, Austin Connolly, and Turner Riddle, and Tim John. I think 3 of those guys are pros now.
Wow.
Yeah, 3 of them are pros now. I think Turner retired, and Tim's been getting like 2nd and 3rds for a few years in a row. And then the next year, that was the COVID year. So it was a little down that year. And then 21 was when everybody did nationals. And I think there was 44 heavyweights that year.
Wow.
And I was in there with like Justin Shire, Jordan Janowitz, Walter Debs. And I got 13th. I think I was huge that year. But I wasn't lean enough. And I got carbs too hard, so I just started spilling pretty bad. But yeah, I was probably like 240 on stage that show. It was pretty bonkers. And then after Compton, I moved to Florida, and I was actually going to retire after that show because I got second call-outs, and I was just like, I think I'm done with this. And Jacoby was, he had turned pro there. We had gone out for breakfast after nationals, and I was like kind of, down about the whole thing. And he's like, well, instead of retiring, why don't you give me a shot at coaching you? I'd love to work with. Back then, he didn't really have a lot of like big bodybuilder dudes. He was kind of known as like the women's physique coach for a while. So I was like one of his first big bodies to play with. And so I hired him, I gave him a shot at it, and I actually wound up moving to Florida during that whole time.
Cool.
That was kind of a symptom of COVID. Actually, I'd gone remote with my job for like 2.5 years, and I was in this whole fight with my work about can't come to the office because I'm not vaccinated and blah, blah, blah. So I got tired of living in Connecticut, and I've been doing my job fine for 2 years remotely, in many ways better. And there was a whole bunch of reasons why we moved: personal reasons, family reasons, real estate reasons, being able to make some money on the house up there, come down here, be near my family, my grandparents. This is where me and my wife met, in Florida. I was born in Florida. We went to college in Florida. And then the bodybuilding scene happened to be, pretty strong in this area. And I actually have way more of a social life since we moved here.
Cool.
And so then Jacoby took over, and then we did our first show qualifier last year, and our first USA's run national level show. And that was the best I ever looked. So we had a really good go, and we're looking at doing it again this year. And I've been training with him. He's hurt right now. He hurt his arm, but he's been my training partner for the past couple of years, mostly.
Awesome. And what has it been like working with Justin? Like, what have you enjoyed? What have you found different? What obviously you have a great relationship beyond just coaching, but what's it been like working with him?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because they call it Camp Jansen because he works under the Camp Jansen group, but it's kind of like going to bodybuilding camp. It's very intimate. There's a lot of attention to detail, a lot of looking at the training being something that's very closely looked at. I've learned his methods pretty quickly as far as food goes. He's not afraid to push food. The prep is usually very long and thought out, with like pretty aggressive with food still in, and doing lots of refeeds. So I do, I figured out more like what works with my body, using more walks, and paying a lot more attention to my GI and my gut health, all these things. It's just, there's a lot of attention that comes from him, especially when you're in prep. It's like he's hovering, right?
Yeah.
Off season, not as much, but I've been doing this for 10 years, so I don't need as much guidance in the off season. But like when we flip the switch, it's like game time. And I really appreciate that. And I've never had a coach that's been like, dude, when we went to USA's, man, like he was on the Spirit Airlines with me in the front row, 3 weeks out from his show, eating his prep food. Well, I mean, my prep food, and he's like helping me carry my luggage and water into the hotel when he weighs less than me.
Amazing.
And he's 3 weeks out, and he's getting a hotel room next to me, and coming in to look at me for pictures every 3 hours, and walking with me 15,000 steps through the convention to get to and he was in the middle of prep while coaching all these other people too. And he had other athletes there, and he's like more excited for you to compete than you, and he's like more emotionally invested than you. And obviously when I won the Orlando show, I never even won an overall before. I've been competing for a while. I've lost 3 or 4 overalls. They've always been close. So that was the first overall I won, and I was like, we both just like hugged and cried afterwards because it was like a goal that we both had. And Ruth had done that one with me, and she had won the overall too. So that was a cool moment.
Oh, that's amazing.
And then at USA is like, we really thought we had it. We really thought we won. I thought for sure we were going to get rejudged at finals. And when I got second, it was tough, but like it was tough on me, but I felt like worse for him because he felt like he let me down, and we hugged and cried again,
Yeah.
So like other years, other coaches, it just hasn't been like that. So like I said, it's just like really intimate.
Yeah, that's amazing. He seems like such a great guy and really pours his heart and soul into his athletes. Talk about what you learned from last year's prep and maybe what you're doing differently this year, or some of your takeaways.
Starting early is good for me. I'm a body that holds on to fat. I put on size and weight very easily. Takes longer for me to take it off. Staying leaner in the off season is key. Um, what I didn't realize is how much more active I am in a warm environment. So when I used to prep in Connecticut, just to like put it in perspective, there were times where I was doing 2.5 hours of cardio a day, and like walking on the treadmill or doing the elliptical, and I'd wake up at 4 a.m. and my house would be like 57 degrees because it's freezing, and I'd have to like build a fire and like warm myself up to like get ready to do it was miserable. In Florida, like I wake up, I have my coffee, I get my dog, we go for the walk, it's 85 degrees, I'm warm and sweaty. I do 8,000 steps in the morning. I come home, I hop on the bike for 25 minutes, bang out some intervals, and do some stretching, and then like done my cardio for the day. Then I just have to train later. Doing it like that, just being so much more active, getting my steps in, like going around doing stuff outside rather than being stuck in a cold environments, freezing and stuff like that makes a big difference. Environment makes a big difference. And I know that's like tough to say to people that live in colder climates, but like there's a reason why people move to California or move to Florida. Like you're more active, it's warmer, it's easier to do stuff. So like in that sense, like taking advantage of being able to like just be active makes it so that I don't have to do as much cardio. Right. That was like the main thing that really helped last year.
February was a very long month for me.
I'll just say that. I bet. Where do you live?
I live in New York.
Yeah. So when you're prepping in the middle of winter, it's rough.
Yeah.
And then the sun sets at 4 and then, it's dark all night. Yeah. Some of the other things I learned, the training. So not training yourself into a deficit, like a recovery deficit that you can't come out of, not driving yourself into the ground, which I've done before, where like I just totally wreck my CNS and like I'm so exhausted and I can't like function. Being able to like approach my training with the proper amount of intensity, where you're not going to like hit your off-season numbers. You still need to create a stimulus where you hold on to the muscle, and you have to like really think about the muscles you're trying to work rather than just rage moving stuff, which you can still do. You can still do in a prep. I tell you, like there's times in prep when like certain chemicals come in and I put 405 pounds on the bar. Like it feels like there's nothing on the bar sometimes, which is a little bit scary, but that's how it gets at certain points in prep with me. So I have to like really think about what I'm doing and being intentional. And then like being very strategic about which sets you take to those like dark places where you just go very crazy, and then backing off and other aspects of it, and not just like burying yourself, because you have to train all these other body parts throughout the week. So that was something that I learned, kind of like staying within myself, which I think a lot of people can always stand to train a little harder. Usually I'm kind of the opposite, where I like train like a crazy person usually, and I have to tell myself to like back off sometimes. Otherwise my look starts to get worse. I'll be like, how are my legs shrinking when I was like banging 8 plates on the hack squat for 20 reps? So stuff like that. It's like a maturing process that I've learned under Jacoby, who I think he's, probably learned from his coach. So it's just trial and error that you learn over the years. Knowing when to land the plane, basically. It's like when you're like a few weeks out, there's no reason to be. I mean, I still do it sometimes. I still try to hit a little PR right before I go onto the stage, just to like see what I can do. But I'm like very strategic with it, picking and choosing your battles, when to lower the weight, when to stop 1 rep short of like real technical failure, all those things, just so that you can like protect your sleep and not like go crazy catabolic and then like wake up looking worse. That's what you don't want to do. And like taking those rest days and like really, really enjoying the recovery. And it's amazing how much your body rewards you when you do that, especially when you're that lean. You can just see it like day by day. It's pretty exciting when you nail it just right.
Yeah, absolutely. And the goal this year is nationals in December, correct?
Yeah, December 14th, Nationals. I believe it's in Texas this year.
Okay. And how did you choose? Like, I know you did USA's last year. How did you decide on nationals this year versus USA's again?
I wanted more time in the off season to really make sure I solidify my size and my muscle gain into the super heavy class. I mean, I've stayed at over 280 pounds for 6 months, so I feel like
Wow.
I've really and decent conditioning. I haven't been this conditioned at this weight before. Still like pretty athletic in the movements that I'm doing, and I've reintroduced like pretty intense cardio, biking cardio. I do these little biking cycle classes because I'm kind of toxic and I'm super competitive, so I like to try to beat all the soccer moms on the bike on the
Nice.
brown bike. But yeah, so nationals wound up being the end of the year. And also I didn't want to get in a position where I get a second place pro card again. So nationals, I know there's more competitors, it's kind of a wash, like you're gonna run into more people. But the thing about doing USA is I'm not like a genetic anomaly where I'm just like, if I'm 100% on, no one's beat me. Like there are people out there who are really, really good. If they come in decent shape, they're going to beat everybody. I'm not that person. So if I went and did USA's again, there's a solid chance that some crazy genetic freak will come and just, knock me off and I'll get second again. And I just didn't want to do that 2 years in a row. Okay. So at least at nationals, there's that second pro card. Obviously I would love to win the whole class. Right. But if I'm going to fly my family out and they're going to cheer for me for the 4th year in a row, I'd like to give myself a better shot at attaining my ultimate goal, which is the pro card. Which, to circle back to the beginning of the conversation, I never thought I would even ever compete at a national level. I didn't think I had that in me when I started.
Yeah,
and I certainly didn't think I could turn pro. And then when I got top 5, and then last year I got second, I realized it's actually decently attainable. So we just felt like nationals was the best shot this year as far as timing goes, as far as when to start the prep, how long I can kind of push my off season, when to like I'm in my like pre-prep right now, so I'm like doing a mini diet, and so I'm actually down in the low 270s, and then when we actually start prep in August, I'm actually going to try to come up again, throw on a few more pounds, and then prep down, and then now this year I don't have to make a weight class.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So I'd love to be in the 230s, just as peeled as I was at USA's.
Yeah. Yeah. That'd be awesome. And you're also a dad. What's it like to bodybuild as a father, and how has that changed things for you? How do you balance it?
Me and my wife joke that my daughter is going to be so jaded, and she's going to think that any man that isn't over 200 pounds is like not a real man, because like all the men in her life are just monsters. Like,
boy,
like Jacoby will come over, like we'll go hang out with Ivana and Brett, and we're all like, big dudes and stuff. And that's just all she's known, because like she's come to all my shows since she was a baby. During the COVID years, I had to train in my garage, and she would come out to the garage and say like, yay, every time I'd do a set and like, put the weight back up. And then when I would go compete on stage, all the videos that my wife took of me posing, you could hear my daughter in the background saying, go daddy, go daddy, go daddy, go daddy. So I mean, to me it's awesome. She thinks it's like superhero stuff. And like she loves to go to school and be like, yeah, that's my dad, and like brag about me and all that stuff. And sometimes we go to the gym and we bring her, and she just sits with her iPad or her coloring books or her little reading books, and she likes hanging out at the gym. Like she loves going. So it's definitely part of her lifestyle. She eats beef and rice. Her favorite meal is steak. So we asked her sometimes like, hey, do you think you want to bodybuild someday? And she goes, no, I just want to be a mommy. So
it's so sweet. And how does it work with your wife as a bodybuilder too? And how do you guys work together as a team?
So there's like pros and cons to that. So like I always think of my clients who are in a scenario where, say, maybe the woman wants to get in really good shape and the guy doesn't really care but is supportive, but he likes to eat his lasagna and mac and cheese every night. So she's eating her chicken and rice and he's eating lasagna. It makes things kind of unbalanced and a little difficult. Whereas if you're both kind of living the lifestyle, it makes everything more cohesive and there's unity with what you're doing. It makes it easier to determine when you're going to go out to eat, what you're going to buy for groceries. Like everything's on autopilot as far as that goes. So in that sense, it's a positive. When it can be a negative is when like we have a daughter, right? And if Brett wants to train legs on Saturday and Ivana wants to train with Ruth and we can't take the kid to the gym, we have to like change our whole Saturday schedule around because we both want to train with different people. And that's like a 6-hour block that we have to now figure out what to do, which takes away from doing other things we might have done that day, hanging out with friends. And then when you're like deep in prep, obviously tensions run high and it could be difficult because emotions for me become something that I forget about and I become very emotionally distant, right? And we mentioned before that you know, prep is temporary. But I think that any couple that would embark on a prep together needs to really be prepared emotionally to compartmentalize all of it, because like prep is like a certain length of time, and a lot of guys, like especially guys, we become kind of different in the sense that like we don't want to deal with emotions. We don't want to talk and cuddle. We want to be left alone. We want to eat our food, but that's not really us, right? And there's like this distinct memory I have where I was really struggling in this one prep. I think I did Easterns, or maybe it was the East Coast Cup in Connecticut, and I was doing Easterns after that. I just like completely lost my personality like the last month. Like I didn't know how to smile. I couldn't crack a joke. Like I was not interested romantically in anything, like libido just gone. And then we went out to eat after the show and I got like a burger and fries and like had a beer and like started cracking jokes. And then I was laughing again, smiling as my personality came back. And Ruth was like, "Oh, you're back." And I was like, "Yeah, I was always here. I was just buried under a caloric deficit." That's not to say that like prep is ever a reason to be like an asshole to your spouse or your significant other, but like you have to give the other person a lot of grace, especially if you're both doing it together. You're both going through something together. That said, you also grow a lot, I think, as a couple. Our biggest fight we've ever had was about organic honey. We were in Orlando, and Compton had like sent me this whole diet to follow for the peaking process, and it involved like a very specific type of honey that I'm supposed to put in the rice to help with the digestive enzymes, yada yada yada. Who knows if it like is a real thing or not? I don't do that anymore, but that was the order. I had to do that. Long story short, she like left the honey at the house and I like put it out to put in the bag, and I thought she wasn't helping me. And that was a very tough prep, because the whole prep I was never under 225 pounds except for the day we flew out. So I woke up, I was 224, and Compton told me not to drink or eat anything for like 10 hours. So I was like dead walking through the airport. I was like falling over, tripping over my luggage and stuff. That was the year I got on the scale and I weighed in as a heavyweight, and then Carlos Thomas Jr. weighed in as a heavyweight, and he stepped off and chugged water and got back on as a super, and then he won the whole show. And I was like over there dying, trying to make weight. Anyway, we didn't bring the honey, and I was sitting in the hotel room, and I was like, "You didn't bring the honey?" And we had this like fight over it because she's like, "I'll go get it," and she like we went downstairs to the like little shopping mart and came back up with like Smucker's honey from like the coffee shop or something. I was like, "That's not the right honey." And then she got mad and went to go call an Uber to go to Publix, and she wound up like walking 2 miles to like go buy organic honey. And then she came back, and I was like, "This was really, really stupid, this fight about honey." And she's like, "Yeah." I was like, "I'm really sorry." She's like, "Yeah." and then she like helped me make my meals, and then obviously we got over it. But it's like a famous story with us is the honey fight of 2021. So like those are the things that'll happen in a prep. But it's like people joke with us like, if your biggest fight was about honey, you must be doing pretty well. And I have a great partner, so I'm really blessed to be able to do it with her. And the greatest experience we've had together was winning the double overalls. That was awesome. So I would love to do that again. She's gonna compete this year, I think. And it might be right before nationals. So if I'm lean, I might just hop on the show with her and see if we could do it again.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. I recently this last weekend had the talk with my wife about competing again next year. And the number one thing she brought up is just like, you become completely emotionally numb. And like,
Yeah.
I need social time. I need like, more physical and verbal love. And yeah, I just became very distant. So
Yep.
I'm going to try to work on that a lot.
Yeah. And just being able to communicate about it. And when she can tell you like rationally that you're being distant, you can react rationally.
Yeah.
Whereas like when they just bottle up and like it just gets flipped on you randomly while you're making your food and you're starving, then you get hit, you're not expecting it. Oh, I'm not doing anything wrong. And that's when it can be a problem. So like talking about it well in advance and like having a little bit of a plan before you go into the prep, so you guys have some things already thought out about how you'll approach it. That'll help a lot. And honestly, just again, the second time through, always going to be better than the first time because you have that experience now.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's really cool that you've gotten a chance to train with top guys like Brett and Justin and Martin down there. What are some of the things that you've learned from them, and what is your general approach to training, and your opinion on things like volume, frequency, intensity?
Yeah. So training partner, I think I underestimated the importance of that until I moved here. For the longest time I trained alone. I had a great partner in college actually, but that was like the good old days when like you had nothing to do but class, and I would go train triceps for an hour and then I'd go eat and then I'd go train biceps for an hour. It was just total bro stuff, right? But moving to Florida, Jacoby became my training partner again. And I didn't realize how beneficial that is, not only from like having obviously someone to spot you, to push you to try things or do things you've not really done before, maybe outside your comfort zone, and then the competitive nature of it. The thing about Jacoby is he's usually 50 pounds lighter than me and usually doing the same amount of weight as me, and sometimes beating me in reps. And like, I'm not a weak guy either. Like,
Yeah.
I'm probably one of the stronger amateurs, I'd say, in most movements. And that dude can hang with me, and sometimes he smokes me. Sometimes I show off and I let him go first, and then I like throw on a bunch of plates and do a ton more reps. Just like he's like, "Oh, you've been sandbagging this whole workout." I was like, "Yeah, I was waiting for my moment." But I can be pretty competitive, and that can kind of like be to my detriment, because sometimes I'll train with Brett and I'll be like on TRT and like I have a knee issue, but I don't want to like, let him down in the workout. So I try to like fight through it. And then my knee is swollen for 7 days because I didn't take it easy. But we've had some awesome sessions. Training with Brett, he's a little different than Jacoby. He's he does more volume, but it's just like high, heavy intensity, more sets. It's nothing light and fluffy about it at all. Very intense, which I love training that way. I love feeling like if I'm going to go out and eat sushi on the weekend for my cheat meal or whatever, that I like really earned it in the gym. And anytime you train with Brett, you earned like 6 meals out pretty much. That's how I feel about that. And then my training philosophy has definitely evolved over the years. I'd say I'd probably taken the most of my knowledge from John Meadows. And John actually wrote me a training plan, or he sent me some training plans for my first and second run at nationals right around the time he died. And my last message to me from him was, "You're going to light it up at nationals." And that was the last message he wrote me. And he died a week later, which sucked. It's funny because Brett obviously trained with John a bunch, and Ivana was trained under John a bunch. So I love like the power building side of bodybuilding. I love to train a little heavier in like the 6 to 9 rep range. And I like to kind of chase some numbers sometimes, but you can't, especially as I've gotten older, joints just can't handle it like I used to be able to do it. So I've adopted like the push pull legs thing, which I was always kind of iffy on, but Jacoby got me into that. the frequency training picked up from John, but a lot of these other guys do the higher frequency. You maximize your recovery with all the food, just enough gear to get the recovery, and less is more really with the gear. This was the least amount of gear the last 2 years I've taken, probably. I haven't even gone above a gram a test, which other years I've been above a gram a test. So the frequency training being the part of that, and then I liked John's whole style of like priming your muscles. So like let's say we're gonna go do like chest, and I want to incline press heavy. How would I build the workout around that? Usually I would start with some kind of like sarcoplasmic pump to like get blood into whatever area I really want to activate. And I want to pick a movement where I can really feel like the chest turning on, and then do like the same thing with my shoulders, and then do feeder sets for that, like powerful exercise you want to do. Like, don't waste all your reps with all this junk volume. Like, be strategic and like have like a number in your mind that you want to go for, then like go for it. And if it feels really good, like, I'm not opposed to doing 2 top sets and a back off set. And if you think about it that way, it's like you're doing 3 sets of like normal reps that you would do, like 3 sets of 10. But I think of in terms of these like all out efforts, like my top set is going to be 405 for 10, but if it feels really good, I want to try it again, maybe do it for 8. And then maybe I'll do my back off for like 365 or 315. And then moving on and doing like finishing work. I do a lot of my workouts that way, where I like pick a really big, strong compound movement where I really want to do most of the work, and everything else kind of like leads to that. And then I, flip it around and do like a shoulders version of that on my push day with chest. And then the other big thing that I started doing is I started doing 2 leg days where I switch between quads and hamstrings to bring up my posterior chain. Before, I used to always just train legs by themselves. And it's funny because like I feel like our hamstring days always turn into like quad days too anyway.
Yeah.
Because the next thing you know, we have 24 plates on the Cybex squat press, and I'm using all my legs to get that up. It's not just staying on my hamstrings. So it's funny because like I remember training with Brett one day. We were just like doing so many hamstring sets, and there's a lot of exercises. And I was like, all right, we have to be getting close to being done. He's like, all right, let's go squat. I was like, what? And next thing I know, we had like 5 plates on the transformer bar, squatting it at the end of his workout. But when you're like pushing it in off season, the food's high, the gear's high, your frequency is high, you can do stuff like that. So
yeah,
training more like a bodybuilder as I've gotten older, thinking about like when I want to be very intense, and then having like all that bodybuilding like thought behind my movement patterns, like how I'm going to load my hamstrings, how I'm going to prep my chest to press heavy so I don't hurt myself, but so I can still get a good load. All these things go into the equation. And then back training is something that last year I feel like it took me 10 years to figure out how to get my back to grow. A lot of Jacoby got me into T-bar rowing, like hinging at the hips, loading my spine, and not just like using my biceps or momentum to move barbells, and really like actually like contracting my scapula and moving them and feeling my back. And again, like priming my back. So like one of the best things I learned was to like do that stupid single arm pull down thing. I was like, oh, I could feel my lat turning on, and you get all that blood in there, and then you go to those heavier movements and you can actually feel things working.
Yeah.
So like not being afraid to mature my training, and not I certainly trained a little crazier like when I was younger. Probably doing more like impressive things, but nowadays it might be look a lot more controlled, but I'm thinking about loading the muscle and really trying to be intentional about everything I'm doing. And like everything to me, like every working set that I do, my goal is to get as close to failure or technical failure as I can, like I chase those hard reps where like those last 3 or 4 reps are very hard. And like, that's kind of like when the set counts to me. And then it's always good to have your partner help you finish a couple. And like when you're in a workout and you're doing exercises, you only need those few reps, like 3 or 4 times in the workout where you do that, 3 or 4 reps like that. Like that's where the stimulus happens.
Yeah.
Everything just needs to lead to that, where you can do that safely, whether you're doing it through load, whether you're doing it through tempo, whether you're doing it through the number of sets that you need to do or the number of reps that you need to do. You chase those, and then you get out of the gym and you go eat and you rest. And then if you can do that twice in the week for the same body part, then instead of 52 times a year, you get 104 times a year, where you get that same stimulus, that same effect. So that's the long answer for how I've adjusted my training with more frequency, being more intentional how I train, and having a partner just helps a lot. And then like the last thing I would say, the environment, being in an environment where like other people are like training hard, pushes you to train hard. There's nothing to really replace that. I mean, I've trained in an empty garage by myself, and it's tough sometimes to like amp yourself up. You can hoot and holler all you want, but when you have IFBB pros yelling in your ear, yeah, I don't know. You dig a little deeper sometimes, so that's definitely part of it. And where I am, where I live, where I train is a big blessing that I try not to take for granted. Ever since I moved here, obviously my training has just gotten better, and it's reflected in the physique.
Yeah. I can't imagine how you could not train hard training with Brett and some of those other people. It's really cool. And yeah, very John Meadows-esque. I love it. That's definitely how I like to structure training too. I really, really keep going back to John Meadows stuff every time like I have a question about something.
It's so great. Like even 2 weeks ago, because Jacoby hurt his arm and I wanted to go do an arm workout. I do an arm day too. I haven't talked about that, but I slot an arm day in as my 6th day just because I need bigger arms. I think that if you're trying to be a men's open pro, like you can never really have enough arms, right? And I remember I opened his arm training manual. I have it in Google Drive, and I was like, I'm going to do this workout, and I did it, man. I was like, holy crap, I'm so pumped. I was like curling kettlebells or something, and I couldn't believe how pumped I was, and doing like pronated dumbbell kickbacks and all these other like funny little exercises he came up with. They were so effective. So like, I love going back to the well that is John Meadows. All that stuff.
Yeah,
is something.
He's a genius.
Yep.
And yeah, definitely when someone gets as strong as you, the like activation and kind of pre-fatiguing type stuff is so important. I'm not strong, but my legs are like disproportionately strong, mainly because they're really, really short. And so I've had to learn this multiple times through injuries that I can't just go in and do like load up the Cybex hack and go for it. Like I need to do stuff before that. Otherwise something is going to happen.
Yeah, it's more efficient that way, because a lot of us probably used to put our strongest power movement second in the workout, but now I usually do it like 3 or 4th. Like I like to be really pre-fatigued. I mean, I love to actually sit there in the leg extension and just pound my quads in the leg extension until they're just like fried, and then I'll go into like some kind of hack or something, and that way I don't have to put as many plates on there and have my knees killing me for days on end. So again, if your quads are already tired and you're able to chase those reps that I talked about, it doesn't really matter if it's 4 plates or 8 plates. The effect should really be the same.
And how about your approach on diet? You talked a little bit how Justin believes in like more food and feeding you during prep, having refeeds. What's your general approach to diet, or how you would say maybe it's different than other bodybuilders?
It's really not that different. I mean, I feel like everybody eats the same stuff. He does a lot more like beef and fat in meals, I would say, than some. There would be some that say that fat makes you fat, which is true to an extent. But for instance, when I'm filling out for a show and I'm eating beef and I'm adding like mac oil with rice and salt, like that makes me look nasty. Whereas if I'm eating fish and chicken, it just wouldn't look the same to me. And then as far as like dieting goes in prep, it's almost like Groundhog Day every week. We would trim the food a little bit. run the whole plan for the week. I'm still eating 6, sometimes 7 meals a day. And usually we would do like a big high day on a Friday or a Saturday, and I'd eat so much food on the weekend that I'd be sick of food again, and I'd be happy to go and diet again for the rest of the week, and just like staying ahead of the deficit that you dig yourself into. Your training starts to suffer, and then your physique starts looking bad. The refeeds are important. I think that he's learned through me and others like that method of how to keep like a big body happy. Otherwise, you really start wasting muscle. And I had like that's changed for me as I've gotten bigger, because I used to compete as a light heavyweight back when I first started. And I had to do like the bikini girl diet back then. Like the idea of eating carbs. I don't think I had a single non-carb meal last year when I was in prep. I think I always had at least like a cup of rice in my meals.
Yeah.
So the diet evolves, and this diet this year might even be different. I'm very robotic though. I just like things to be on autopilot when I flip the switch into prep. I have this like 10-cup Japanese rice maker that
nice
keeps it warm. So I know I'm going to go in there. There's going to be 300 grams of rice. I put it in. I put my 200 grams of beef, put my, flavored olive oil in there, mix it up, heat it up. I've eaten that, I don't know, like 27 times this week or something. Right. And then chicken. And then like, I actually get kind of sick of eating rice all the time. And I know a lot of bodybuilders eat cream of rice. I've been eating cream of wheat this year.
Oh, interesting.
A little different because there's a gluten component to cream of wheat. Because like think about it, you eat rice literally all day every year, and then you're like done with your show, and then you go eat like pancakes and a burger or something, and you eat gluten, and your stomach's all messed up.
Yeah.
If I keep a little bit of gluten in there with the cream of wheat, I feel like I'm like kind of keeping some balance in my gut.
Yeah, that's smart.
And it's still very effective. Like the reason I like it is because it's quick to digest. I can cook it in a minute and a half, and I have like a special way I cook it, and then I dump my frozen berries in it and I eat it like it's cream of rice. So
yeah.
And then what works really well for me for refeeds, like cheat meals when I'm in prep, is I'd like to get like a big steak dinner, because I'll go out and I'll get like a big semi-fatty piece of meat and a potato, and it doesn't like totally wreck me as far as like making my weight go crazy, but it like really brings my physique back to life the next day. Cool. And then I usually do that on the same day I have like a really high carb refeed. So extra rice in all my meals. And then last meal of the day is usually like a big steak dinner.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like, this is the funny thing about your training partner being your coach, is like, because he'll be in prep and he'll be wanting to go get a meal out, and I'll be in prep and I'll be wanting a meal out. And we train like really, really hard together. And then he schedules my refeed, and he's like, "Hey, so you want to go to this restaurant? I've been wanting to go there." I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure." so we usually would do our meals out together. But then you have to order and eat in front of your coach. Like can't order an extra cheesecake or anything.
Probably
like
a good thing.
Yeah, so it's a double-edged sword for sure. But that was really fun last year. I'm sure we'll probably do it again this year.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think I have the same Japanese rice cooker, but my wife made me get the 5.5 cup one. And I had to fill it twice a day.
Oh no.
Off season.
Yeah. The big one, it gets hot and it makes the rice crusty. So if it sits there for a while on the outside, but if you put the like wax paper in between the convector and the bowl, it'll keep that from happening. That's something I learned this week.
Oh, nice. I'll try
from one rice cooker owner to another.
Nice. It's a hot tip. And talk about your career outside of bodybuilding. I know you're an author, Justin. How did that evolve, and what else do you do outside of bodybuilding?
Yeah, so I went to college for English and history. I was a double major. I met my wife in creative writing class, actually.
Oh, cool.
And I had always wanted to write a book. That was never going to make money. That wasn't really the purpose behind it. But when I graduated college, I got into corporate marketing. And I've changed companies a few times, and now work for a private equity. I'm a corporate communications manager for a firm that's based in Connecticut, and we're in like 18 countries globally. So I do a lot of like executive communication, internal communication, marketing communication, newsletters, press releases, PR. I interface with media. I write a lot of articles, I write case studies, I do research, manage website, social media management, content management. And then for my master's degree, I got an MFA in creative writing. And for my thesis for that was to write a novel length manuscript. And I completed that. I started that degree the year I started bodybuilding, which I wouldn't recommend doing. Because to do all that work, and I was oh my gosh, I was reading like 10 books a week.
Wow.
And I had a 20-page paper due every week because it's a writing degree. And I can't imagine how people do that now with ChatGPT. But anyway, I was like waking up at 3 a.m. to like start writing, read, go do my cardio, make my meals, go to work, run the marketing business, come back, go to the gym, do homework, write. I did that for 3 years, and I did that. I competed 3 times during that time. And then I graduated, and then I published the book 2 years ago now. I think in 22 I published it. Yeah. And it's been out for a bit now. I have a sequel that's about 68,000 words, so it's close to being done. I actually do most of my writing when I'm in prep because I'm so laser focused on what I'm doing, and I need a pastime. I actually get extra creative when I'm in prep because I lose interest in social media. I lose interest in the social life. I become very internal. I think you experience this too, especially in the morning. I have like my little solitude routine in the morning. And when my mind's clear, I like to like sit down and write. So I'm actually planning to finish that sequel this upcoming prep. And if I, my work counts like into, I expect to have it published by the end of the year. We'll see.
Awesome.
So that's fun.
Cool. What's the title of the first book?
It's called Failed States.
Okay, cool.
I don't think I have a copy in this office. It's a post-apocalyptic novel. I wrote it in 2015. It deals with some pretty intense topics, lots of violence, civil war type of stuff. Not really for the faint of heart, right?
Okay.
But it was fun. It was fun.
Cool.
The whole process of learning the publishing industry, that was a whole learning curve for me. There's things I would do differently the second time around. And I have other short stories I've written. I've been published in Publishers Weekly. I won a few awards in college. I had a short story that won an award there. I'm working on some historical fiction stuff, some horror stuff. I like horror stories.
Oh, cool.
I'm submitting a couple of horror short stories to some anthologies. And all of my writing interest actually came from my childhood, which came from like video games. So it was like this
awesome.
It was like this weird little nerdy path I went on. I got really into history because I love this strategy game called Age of Empires. And from there, I started writing short stories about characters and history. And then I got into like sci-fi, Star Wars, role play. And because of all of that writing interest, I got into creative writing in school. And then I got into like apocalyptic stuff, and it just kind of turned me into who I am. I kind of like read something in Age of Empires and made my whole personality about it as a kid. So I have like 50 books about the Byzantine Empire in my other office, and like the Roman Empire and stuff. So I can talk all day about history stuff, very nerdy history stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. I love apocalyptic stuff, so I'm sure I'll really enjoy it. When do you, and you mentioned earlier that after, I forget which year it was, you got 13th at nationals, and you thought you were done. You thought you would stop bodybuilding before you met Justin. Obviously this answer evolves for all of us, but when do you think you'll stop bodybuilding, and why?
So I've always told myself that if I couldn't turn pro by the time I'm like 35, I would probably stop. I started competing pretty late though. I started competing when I was 25, 26 roughly.
Okay.
And so I'm 33 now. So I still have 2 years until I hit that arbitrary number in my head. But the other stipulation I gave myself, as long as I don't have any health problems, issues, or like massive injuries, that I would keep doing it safely. And I've, you know, I didn't have any of these years where I just put on tons of weight like instantly. I've been pretty methodical every year, a few pounds, climbing all the way up. And I feel good. I feel better at this weight than I did last year. I feel pretty healthy. My joints are definitely starting to show signs of age, just like the amount of time it takes to recover, and like swelling and stuff like that. But like at the same time, I feel like a lot of guys hit their mid 30s or early 30s, really. And that's kind of like the prime bodybuilding year. Like the muscles mature, it's dense, it gets hard. You unlock new levels of conditioning now. I feel like this year I could probably be even more conditioned. I'll have more muscle. I'm not injured. My health is good. Why wouldn't I keep going? That said, like there's other things I want to do with my life too. I want to travel. I would love to write more books. I'd love to get to a point where I have 10 books out and on Amazon by the time I'm 40. I have these like goals in mind that I'd like to accomplish, but I still have this one goal that's dangling over my head, which is the pro card. And I told Jacoby sometimes, like, look, I just want to get my pro card so I could retire. It's like, yeah. You'll get your pro card and then you're going to want to do a pro show. Like you'll actually be able to like do pretty good at it because you have the size to be a pro. I'm like, okay. So I honestly don't know the answer to it. I could stop next year. It could be, 7 years from now when I'm 40. So I always talk to Brett about it because he's a few years older than me. And he turned pro, 3 years ago, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. So, he's still improving and still getting better and still very competitive on the pro stage. I would like to still be improving, not injured, and not have like other pressing, problems. Like if I lost my job or something, obviously I probably wouldn't compete at, priorities. But as long as I'm able to do it and do it healthy and be able to, provide for my family and enjoy it and have it be an enjoyable part of my life, I think I'm just going to keep doing it. And then, ideally when I get my pro card, I'll evaluate if I want to keep going. If I do a pro show, like, all right, how much more do I want to put into this as a pro? Those all go into the equation, right? So in my mind, like 35 if I don't turn pro, and then maybe 40 if I am a pro, would probably be when I would stop. So it's kind of like the other back half of life. I kind of want to do other things,
Yeah.
It's like it's always in the back of my mind. You know how much it ties you down.
Yeah.
So
it's there's a very limited period of time in life that we get to do this. And obviously there's so many other things in life beyond bodybuilding, but the window is fairly narrow when you can do it. And
it's hard because then you can feel like if you didn't give it your all now, you'll have regret later. And it's like, I think last year one of my favorite things to do is in October, we go to Connecticut and we go apple picking and we go to all these Halloween haunted attractions. I love that stuff. We went last year and I was apple picking and there's this guy who just like, obviously had never seen a bodybuilder in real life before. It's just like, he just like was outside of his mind. Oh my gosh, you're so big. Look, I need to get it. You're like Miss Captain America. And he like came up to me and he like took a photo with me. He just kept going on and on and on. And I never really know how to respond to that besides like awkwardly laugh and stuff. Like, I think all bodybuilders were like, and he was like, and he's like looking at my daughter, he's looking at my wife. He's like, man, when you're 70 years old and you look back on your photos from USA's, I showed him photos of USA's. You're like, you're going to say that you were just a legend, man. You were just a total legend. Like how many guys can say that they did that? Like what else were you going to go do? Like go on a vacation? You were going to like go work at your cubicle at your job? Like, no, you were almost Mr. USA. He's like, you're going to love that when you're older. Keep doing it. So I always like think of that guy a little bit sometimes. Like when I'm older, I'll just be like, yeah, I was a badass. But you're right though. Like it's a narrow time, and like bodybuilding won't always be there for me. Writing books and stuff will.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just a trade right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Justin. Really, really appreciate it. And I know the audience will too. Where can folks find you and follow along and connect with you if they want to?
Yeah, Instagram's the the main platform I'm on. Justin Y. O'Donnell is my handle. And I also have a author website. If you look my name up on Amazon, if you want to buy the book too, you can just type in Justin O'Donnell Failed States and find it that way.
I'll the link.
I did get on TikTok like last week. So maybe I'll start posting on TikTok. It's the same handle on there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Justin. Have a great day.
Thanks, Scott. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the show. You can find The Scott Mize Show on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Please leave a comment, like, review, or share the podcast with your friends or followers. It helps more people find the show.